Well, hey there, Mama, and welcome back to the Moms Overcoming Overwhelm podcast, episode 150. I'm Emily McDermott, and I'm here beside you on this journey as we work together to declutter your home, head, and heart. Imagine this scene. You're shopping at Target with one of your kids pulling on your leg and the other grabbing random items off the shelves, wailing, "Please, Mommy, can I have this?" And an elderly woman who's in the same aisle smiles at you and says, "Oh, dear, you're going to miss these days. You know, the days are long, but the years are short." Has that ever happened to you? Or imagine that you buy a parenting book that your sister-in-law raves about that has to do with discipline. But when you try it out at home, it's just making you feel uneasy. But it's all that your friends are talking about. It's all that you're seeing in your Instagram ads. So you decide to just push through, even though it's making you miserable. So these are examples of unrealistic expectations, and whether they're placed on us by well-meaning people or we place them on ourselves due to maybe what we've experienced in childhood, it's something that constantly plagues us with self-doubt as moms. We're asking, am I doing enough? Am I doing this right? And so I'm so excited to have Danielle Bettmann back on the show. She is a parenting coach at Parenting Wholeheartedly and the host of the Failing Motherhood Podcast. And we are talking about how to declutter unrealistic expectations and have confidence in our parenting again. So just a little bit about Danielle. She is a positive discipline certified parenting coach, and she empowers parents to crack the code of their strong-willed child's personality, meeting their deepest core needs to improve their behavior and find new levels of patience, which I desperately need. An early childhood educator, certified teacher, and home visitor, Danielle now equips parents from all over the world with Zoom. So instead of inadvertently inviting defiance by using traditional tools or playing whack-a-mole with short-sighted reactions, families get on the same page and learn how to cultivate cooperation while being kind and firm at the same time. So again, she's the host of the Failing Motherhood Podcast, and she's passionate about eliminating shame from parents' vocabulary, reminding them they are the parents their kids need. And she is also a mom to 2 daughters, wife of 15 years to her high school sweetheart, and an avid fan of sunshine and coffee. So without further ado, grab that notebook and pen, and let's dive into today's conversation with Danielle Bettmann. Hey there, Mama. Are you tired of all the stuff crowding your home, calendar, and mind? Do you wish you could say goodbye to the endless to-do list running around in your head? Want to declutter but don't know where to start? You're in the right place. Welcome to Moms Overcoming Overwhelm, where you will find proven and practical solutions to declutter your home, head, and heart. Hi, I'm Emily, a wife, boy mom, and simplicity seeker. I struggled to get pregnant and felt overwhelmed until I discovered decluttering could create the physical and emotional space I needed to become a mom. Now, 2 kids later, I've transformed my life and motherhood by developing simple systems around decluttering, capsule wardrobes, kid stuff, cleaning and tidying, meal planning, time management, and more, and I can't wait to share them with you. If you're ready to reclaim the time and energy you crave, be present with your kids, and finally enjoy the life and motherhood you so deserve, let's kick overwhelm to the curb, shall we? Grab your lukewarm coffee, your notebook and pen, and clear up some counter space. Let's do this. Well, hey, Danielle, thank you so much for coming back on the Moms Overcoming Overwhelm podcast. I am really excited to talk to you today.
Yes, thank you so much for having me back. I'm excited.
Yeah, I was telling Danielle I had like this whole bank of interviews previously, and then I took the break for the summer, and now I'm like, oh my gosh, I need some great interviewees. And I know that you took a little bit of a break too for the summer. We were just talking about that. And I was looking through some of your recent podcast episodes, and I just love, I'm going to have you introduce yourself again in a second, but
Sure.
Failing Motherhood, like you keep it real. And I love that about you so much. And what we're talking about today is like the expectations that we place on ourselves, but also kind of what is placed on us by others and how we can kind of declutter that and break free of it. But before we jump in, can you please reintroduce yourself, about you, your family, kind of who you serve, and then what you might like to do in your spare time?
Oh, yeah, of course. Okay, so my name's Danielle. I am a parenting coach for families with strong-willed kids ages 2 to 10. And yes, I host the podcast Failing Motherhood. So if you're ever afraid that you're screwing up your kids, you are at home, join the club and be reminded that you're not over at our podcast. But the way that I work with families is through a high level, high support group coaching program, specifically for about 4 months, where we work on improving your patience, changing the way you communicate, and meeting your child's core needs of power and control so you can eliminate negative behaviors in a way that is kind of framed is within positive discipline, which is emphasis on kind and firm. And we work with both parents at the same time. And it's all virtual, so it's families from all over, and it's super, super vulnerable and honest as families kind of completely transform the culture of their home over just a few months and take a lot of ownership over their own behavior so they can feel much more proud of it. So I absolutely love what I do. I'm so, so, so lucky to work with the families that I do because they have looked at their kid and their circumstances and they have said, let me learn what I need to learn to be the best parent for my kid. And that takes so much strength and courage, and I'm so proud of them. So that's what I do over at Wholeheartedly, Parenting Wholeheartedly. And then I myself am a parent of two girls. They are 15 months apart. So right now they are 10 and 11. And they just entered fifth and sixth grade, which is crazy. We live in the middle of the Midwest in Nebraska. I've been married to my high school sweetheart now for 15 years. We've been together 21 or two. I can't remember at this point. In my spare time, I love to read fiction, specifically like mysteries or like thrillers, where you know somebody died, but you have to figure out what happened the whole time. So that's my
Oh,
guilty pleasure.
that's so fun. My husband and I have been watching different TV series. That's kind of how we unwind together. And
Yeah.
we're watching Only Murders in the Building right
Love,
now.
love,
Yeah.
love. Yes,
So don't give
exactly.
anything away. We're on season 2. Don't give anything away.
Oh, it just keeps getting better.
Yeah,
Such a
exactly.
good cast.
So,
Yes.
and Danielle is the real deal, people. I attended her masterclass, which we can link to in the show notes, because I definitely have a strong-willed child sitting in his bedroom right now. But I will probably be a client of yours at some point. Like I'm just going to put it out there. Like things are
I would
going
love
pretty
that.
well right now, but
Yep.
I'm happy to work with you in the future and highly recommend your services to all. And normally when we chat, I ask my guests about like a time in their motherhood that they've felt overwhelmed. But because I've already asked you that, I thought we could put a little spin on it. And any time that you can think of, recent or otherwise, when you felt like either you were putting unrealistic expectations on yourself, or if you feel like somebody else, either overtly or kind of on the sly, was sort of putting an expectation on you, and kind of
Mm,
how you were able to deal with that. Because sometimes we have well-meaning relatives and comments and things that make
yes.
us kind of question what we
Hmm.
should be doing. So I would be curious if there was any example from your own motherhood you would like to share.
Oh, so many. Yeah. I mean, I feel like just subconsciously or implicitly, anytime you're parenting around your parents or in-laws, you can just feel like a palpable energy of insecurity. And it could be not at all warranted from even what they have said verbally or what they are actively judging or not judging. It just is there. It's like the elephant in the room, and it's something that comes up with clients a lot. So anytime I parent around my parents, I last year my one of my daughters was on a Y basketball team, and I had to wrestle with her not being good at it on a team sport where they do need people to like participate, right? At like a minimum level of engagement to score points and things. And I could feel how uncomfortable that made me just watching, knowing like it's completely fine. This is the first time she's ever played this. Like it's a Y league, all the things. But like I had to work on the pep talk in my head because I could just feel like I was letting other parents down or something, like really way too much baggage in that moment. Um, and I also can never forget like one of the worst meltdown outbursts, emotional sagas that happened at Walgreens. Or maybe it was CVS. I think it was CVS. Where I had the auto body experience of just like almost floating above us and then seeing us from all angles of all the strangers in the store and just feeling like I, all right, this is one of those moments. It's going to go down in our parenting history of like the meltdown at CVS. How am I going to handle it? And I actually had enough awareness that it was like I was on the spot and I managed it really well, but it easily could have gone the other way if I let that insecurity take over. But I feel like that it just kind of continues to come up. I don't think you ever master managing expectations.
No, and the examples that you gave, so my husband and I were both like band geeks growing up. I did dance and band, and then it was like no sports. And so our boys are getting into sports, and it's interesting because they actually are taking to it pretty well and they're enjoying it. But I understand what you're saying as far as like, because I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, you did competitive cheer. Is that right?
And
Okay.
gymnastics.
And
Yep.
gymnastics. Okay. I was trying to remember from our previous conversation. So like
Good memory.
yeah. So when you have kind of this background of like you were involved in a sport or like something in a team,
Yeah.
and then it's so hard to like figure out that balance with like, is this an expectation? Like it's good for my kids to be able to be on a team and kind of have those, values? Or
Yeah.
is it that it's like my expectation and what I think others are thinking of
Mm-hmm.
me or like my kid? And the other thing is that I definitely had a target. It was a target meltdown.
Okay.
And it was the one time I think Sean was 3, but carrying him, he was big enough that like I had to do like kind of like the wedding carry over the threshold, he
Yep.
was that big,
Oh
but
boy.
carrying him from the toy section, which is usually in the back of the store,
Always in the back. Yep.
yeah, always in the back, all the way through, and just like I just need to get out of this store. I just need to get out of this store.
Yeah.
And then being able to, again, like you said, have the wherewithal to not be like, that was so embarrassing. Like, why are you embarrassing me in front of all these people?
Yeah.
Like, it's not about me. Like, my
Right.
kid is dysregulated, he's upset, he's hurting, whatever. But sometimes my first inclination is like, oh my gosh, like, what are others thinking of
Oh
me
yeah.
carrying this screaming child through the store? So, besides like maybe our own childhood or like our perceptions of like what others are thinking, like where do you think some of these like expectations are coming from or kind of like placed on us? Because I know you know a lot about child psychology and like parent psychology, and I'm just
Yeah.
curious from your personal and professional background, like where do these expectations come from?
Yeah. I feel like I am incredibly lucky because with the work I do, I am exposed to a consistent influx of reality checks and vulnerability from other parents and conversations about these topics that continue to remind me of all the things we need to hear 100 million thousand times in the healthiest sense, and that it's very much like the best benefits of a support group and why people keep going back to things like AA or Al-Anon, because they're just redirections that you constantly need to fight from what feels like the very natural flow of instincts and expectations and patterns and of behavior that our society constructs without us really even realizing it. And when you said that, it made me think about the way that I heard my parents or my mom talk about other families at the dinner table, in the car, to my dad without us even like being a part of the conversation, and how much I think that shaped how I expected to be judged just because I saw other people being judged. And it wasn't anything that I was doing that warranted anything. It was just like an overwhelming sense of this is how everyone thinks. So then if they think that of that person, then they're going to find plenty of things to judge about me. And here's what I'm already aware of that I'm insecure about. So that's just going to put a magnifying glass or exacerbate or feel like I'm, in the Truman Show and everybody's watching. So, I think that there's much worse varying degrees of that, and there could be, people that have much less of that and naturally. But I think that it's inevitable. I think that it's a huge part of trying to find your own path in your own way with any level of confidence as a parent, let alone, self-discovery as a whole and self-improvement as an adult. But I think so much of it comes back to not or knowing who knows your kid best, which is you, not your in-laws, not your parents. Of course, they're well-meaning, but it's a different world and it's a different kid. So parenting needs to be much more nuanced and individualized to the kid that's in front of you rather than any huge overarching best practice principles that were true of raising kids 25 years ago. That everything needs to be gut checked based on the context and the environment and the kid and their temperament and personality and all those things. So, in order to really find what works best for you, is to feel convicted in your own gut. So, like, usually I tell parents if it feels wrong, it probably is, which could be you trying to do something that you heard as a great best practice on Instagram, but it doesn't feel right for some reason. That's usually probably true. And so that might look like trying to put in, a strict discipline practice, like, I don't know, 1, 2, 3 magic. And then just feeling like it feels icky when you try to do it, even though you're doing it by the book. Okay, listen to that. Figure out maybe why that is and validate yourself because you do know your kid better than the author of that book knows your kid. But it's very hard to continue to kind of find and wrestle with and settle on what feels right to you as a parent in your family without really being able to kind of be exposed to a lot of things to be able to put it into context, if that makes sense.
Oh, definitely. I think a lot about like my grandmother's generation and then us, you
Mhm.
know. I think about that she raised 4 kids and she was in a rural area and like where did her influences come from?
Oh,
Probably
yeah.
her parents and she lived with her in-laws, I believe in the same house. Of course, I'm sure they had some opinions.
Oh, yeah.
Their church family, like that kind of
Yep.
thing. But then you don't have necessarily all the exposure that we do. And here we are
Hmm.
on a podcast giving, tips and guidance and advice, but like, podcasts and the books and the social media and everything, just kind of like the exposure and the influences from everyone coming at you all the time. I feel like there's so much more questioning, and
Hmm.
not that that's necessarily a bad thing to like figure out and learn about other perspectives, but I feel like we're constantly as parents doubting ourselves. Like
100%.
everything is, I'm doubting if this is the quote unquote right decision, and
Hmm.
also thinking or catastrophizing about what the ripple effect might be. So
Yep.
going back
It's a
to
lot
your
of pressure.
daughter and like,
Hmm.
okay, well, if she does, I'm not saying this is you, but like if she doesn't play basketball at the Y, then she won't play
Hmm.
basketball in this league, and then she won't play basketball in college, and then blah, blah,
Yeah.
And I have to stop myself anytime I kind of have that thinking, because especially where I am in Washington, D.C., everyone is like so focused on all the clubs and the achievements and all of these things.
Hmm.
I have to be like, no, like what are my husband and I on the same page about with our values, like our family mission and our values and what
Yeah.
feels right. But it's really hard.
It's so hard. I think too much of a good thing is a bad thing. And so it's like everything in moderation. I think we've swung from, what you said, your grandma's generation to now where we have too much exposure, too much stimulus, too much information. And it's absolutely at an overload where we can't possibly make a decision without second guessing or overthinking or undermining our own selves. And and I think there's always a lot of parallels for me between entrepreneurship and parenting, where, yeah, if you go to start a business and then start to get an algorithm full of advice about business, you're instantly going to get imposter syndrome. You're going to feel like you don't know anything about anything because you don't. But then, you're not going to feel any more sense of confidence the more voices are speaking into what you should be doing or what you're missing or what you need. And, that's where the best decision I made was to find one coach, unfollow the rest of the noise, and spend in total a year and a half working with her so that I could ask all of my questions specifically, knowing that it was coming from, a source I trusted. That's what I feel like absolutely laid the foundation I needed for my business. I don't think I could have created that same sense of like solidity in my, that's not a word, in my model of my business without that, level of support. And so that's why I recommend the way that I designed my programs, because going deep with one source, I think provides a sense of clarity that you just can't get from like the hodgepodge quilts of input otherwise.
Yeah, really like being able to put the blinders on and then being
Yeah.
able to focus. So the episode that you had, which I'll link in the show notes, which really encouraged me to bring you on to the show, was something that has happened to me before, and I'm sure depending on people's stage of motherhood. It seems to be like when we're in the thick of the chaos and have like the young kids that are screaming and pulling on our legs and everything. So
Hmm.
if we go back to like the Target, for example, and this very sweet older woman, comes up to you, Danielle, and she's like, "Oh, sweetie, the days are long, but the years are short." No. Yeah, is that it?
Yep. No, that's it.
I almost
You're
messed
gonna
it
miss
up.
this. You're gonna miss this.
You're really gonna miss this. Like they're only little for so long. And then we go on Instagram and it's like, I'm, sleeping beside my child and smelling his hair and like all the like super romanticized things. And
Yeah.
then for me, as someone that had postpartum anxiety, I just figured out these like PMDD type symptoms that were causing me to like cry, 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 cry. Luckily I've been able to
Hmm.
figure that out. I'm feeling like a new
Hmm.
person, so we're happy about
Good.
that. But just to like, wait, this is not, no, I'm not enjoying this. Or like my kids go back to school and I am overjoyed
Yeah.
because they have been at each other the whole summer. And yeah, we've had some good memories, but most
Hmm.
of it has been them at each other's throats for the whole
Yeah.
summer. So how do we deal with kind of that like guilt of like the expectation is that I'm supposed to be enjoying this all the time because
Yes.
this is what the well-meaning woman in Target and my Instagram feed is telling me, that every moment in motherhood is precious and I'm supposed to be enjoying it all. Like, and so
Yeah.
if I don't enjoy it all, does that make
You're
me
a
a
bad person.
bad
Yeah.
mom? So can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that? Because I know we've all felt
Yes.
like that time to time.
Oh my gosh, I have so much to say about this because I do think that we all struggle with it because there is an element of truth to it and we know it. Because I had my daughters back to back, and when I was in the hospital with my second daughter, I was crying out of the inevitable nostalgia in the future of looking back at this moment, knowing how quick it's going to go because of how quick the last year had been and how different things had felt already just having a 15-month-old. And I will never remember what that felt like because it feels like, you get to stop time for a second and just realize like the perception of it. And it's so impactful because you know how fleeting the moments are. You know how precious they are. You know how much you want to stop time and soak it up and, be present and all those things. And the idea of it sounds absolutely idyllic because it is unrealistic and we don't get to stop time. And there's never going to be moments where we get to not have any adult responsibilities, not be a person outside of who we are in motherhood, and not have external stress and anxiety and other things happening in real time at the same time as raising them. And we wish that was the case, that we could just, detach and stop time, but you can't. So trying to deal with that inevitable reality is a hard pill to swallow. And it isn't made any better by all the voices saying, well, the mess can wait because, babies don't keep and all that messaging. It's so, I think, toxic because it just pushes the bruise that's already there that makes us feel even worse, that we know we failed at being present today. We know we didn't get to soak them up at bedtime. In fact, we yelled at them at bedtime. So yeah, make me feel even worse about that, please. I think that when I was reflecting on this for my episode, I really just think that there is a fascination with early childhood years that is absorbing like the cuteness and how adorable they are and how much you just like, one day you're going to set them down and never pick them up again. And it's going to break your heart into 1,000 pieces. But I do think that pressure is manufactured in some ways because as parents and as a society, we're a little bit intimidated by their independence. And when they talk back, when they have hormones, when they go off on their own and make decisions we don't love, or they don't become who we thought they were going to be, or they inevitably have their own struggles in life and hard times. It's not as cute and adorable, frankly. And so, of course, we find that, we're so nostalgic and sentimental and, just wish we could go back to the early years. And nostalgia, it comes back to being able to be back in that moment without any of the external stress and anxiety. That's what it actually is, which is fake. That's not how it felt in the moment. You weren't that fun, having that much fun, frankly. Trying to get a baby desperately to sleep. You don't really actually want to go back to that moment, right? It's the idea of it without the anxiety, without the stress, without all of the other things happening at that same time. And so what I wanted to reassure my listeners was there's so much more good to come. And, there are pros and cons to every age. As they get older, yes, they become more independent, more themselves. They have BO. There are other issues. But I mean, parenting is a lifelong endeavor. This is your parent-child relationship lasts for life. So, everything should come into a much more widened, zoomed out lens of what I do is not only influential and impactful for just a few years when they're really easily manipulated and I can pick them up and take them out of the store. Now, everything should be in the perspective of how will this impact the adult they become? How will this impact our relationship in 20 years? Will they want to come home for Christmas? Will I get to spend time with them regularly? Will they want to hang out with me? And how does that impact how, we interact now? And there's so much potential for so many more fun memories, great times, amazing opportunities to get to know the person that they become when you look at it in that long-term lens. And I think that can take a lot of that pressure off of like, well, you only get 18 summers with them. No, you don't. And if you get more than that, it is an absolute privilege because that's not afforded to every family. And I think being able to just be grateful for the moment you're in is a really powerful thing.
No, I totally agree. And that's the thing. I've never been super sentimental with like the, oh, only 18 summers. And I have a good friend and she has one child. It was their miracle baby, and he just went off to college, and she's been preparing herself like a long time for it.
Mm-hmm.
And she can still appreciate like what's happening in the moment without having to be like, again, romanticizing everything to the
Mm-hmm.
past. And I think it's our normal inclination to do that. Sometimes I think with my husband, I'm like, what did we do on our weekends before we
Oh
had
my gosh,
kids?
right?
Like, we literally can't remember. I'm like, I think we watched like entire football games, like the full 3 hours. I think we did that.
There's a thing called binge
I
watching that people do. I don't know.
know. But I think it's so great to, kind of like what we were talking about at the beginning, really to have that gut check and like, does this feel right? Does it feel good for me and our family in this situation? And
Mm-hmm.
also to recognize that there are blessings in the past, obviously, but there's so many
Yeah.
blessings in the future, like to look forward to and to
Yeah.
have that perspective, I think is so healthy. Anything else you want to share before you can also share where people can best connect with you?
Yeah. Um, I always want to, with this whole idea, I think the main takeaway is it's okay to step away. It's okay to not maximize every moment, not do a Pinterest project every day after school, not hold yourself to an unreasonable standard, and really advocate for your own needs. Because if you do lay yourself down as a doormat for 18 years out of this idea of like, I only have so much time and it's so precious and I have to spend every waking moment staring at my child, that does not do them a service. It does them a disservice. Whatever is not benefiting and serving you as their parent, it is not benefiting them. And sometimes that's going to mean hard decisions, like we can't do the competitive travel league as a family, right? Where, yeah, that's a very hard decision. There's a lot there. There's a lot of potential memories and, things in that past that could be a benefit. But if that's going to eventually drain your finances to a very stressful point, or put a grate on your marriage relationship that 5 years from now ends up combusting out of burnout, that's probably not the best decision for your family. And it's really hard to know that in the moment, but zooming out to say in that big, wide lens of what's the trajectory 20 years from now, and let those goals inform today what this season should look like for our family. It's going to be saying no a little bit more often and having to do that out of a source of self-advocacy. But just know it is more damaging to your kids to see you burnt out all the time, overwhelmed, taking it out on them and making them feel a little bit responsible or guilty for their interests or their passions, rather than being able to be a sturdy leader that is able to allocate balance and say, this is what we can manage in this season. These are our limitations. How can we find an outlet for you within those frameworks so that we all stay sane and prioritize our relationships? And I think that that's just hard to implement overall, but you need to hear as many quote unquote expert voices as you can, giving you that permission so that you actually do feel like you can do that.
Yeah, I always feel like I'm giving decluttering permission slips. So I
Yes.
have the decluttering ones and Danielle has the parenting ones. And
Yep.
like I say,
I dole
giving
them out very copiously.
Yeah,
Yes.
I was saying I give them out like Oprah gives out cars. So there you go.
You get a permission slip.
You
You get a permission slip.
So please tell us the best way that people can connect with you, where they can find you, all the good stuff.
Yeah. So wherever you're listening to this podcast, you can search Failing Motherhood, subscribe, follow, find us there. We have 160 episodes. I think we started at a very similar time as Emily. So lots of interviews and advice for parenting kind of neurodivergent or very strong-willed kids, and you'll find your home there if that's you. My website, parentingwholeheartedly.com. That's where you can find that free masterclass on being a calm and confident parent of your strong-willed child, releasing guilt and being able to not crush their spirit, but find ways that are kind and firm to prioritize your relationship. And then I also have the more info on how to work with me there at parentingwholeheartedly.com. And on Instagram, I'm at parent_wholeheartedly.
Wonderful. I will link to everything. Thank you so much for coming back on the show. It's always wonderful chatting with you, and I just really appreciate your time.
Of course. Thanks for having me. This is so much fun.
If you like today's podcast, here's what you can do. Just take 30 seconds to leave me a review. I know you're a busy mama. You're overwhelmed, in fact, but 30 seconds of your day makes such an impact. I'll be blessed by your words. They'll definitely make my day. And who knows, you might be entered for this month's giveaway. In Apple Podcasts, scroll down to write a review. Thanks so much for your time. I'm so grateful for you.